Hey guys, so I normally don't make two videos this close to each other because I like to give you time to watch the new ones, but I am snowed in today. I had an awesome video request on Instagram that I had never thought about, so I decided to go ahead and do it. So I got asked about if I could talk a little about the difference between buying painted and unpainted and the pros and cons to each one. So you gotta remember, this is gonna be my opinion. It's also gonna be things I've noticed. This is largely gonna be based on you. You really have to make the call between unpainted and painted. I'm gonna kind of go through examples of how you can sometimes pick if you're not really sure. So obviously a painted resin is gonna have a paint job, and an unpainted resin is gonna be completely blank. Normally they're not gonna be prepped, so they're gonna have seams and stuff like that. The cool thing about buying an unpainted resin is you can pick your own color. If you want a change made, you can have a change made to them. You can personalize it, meaning you can pick your artist. If you want it as a portrait, you can do a portrait. Buying a painted piece is nice because you don't have to worry about all that, and you don't have to try and pick a color if you're indecisive. You can wait and see what the color looks like on the mold. Sometimes when you paint an unpainted model, let's just say a black color, you might decide after seeing the black you don't like the black. But when you buy it painted, you already know what it's going to look like because you're looking at it. So there's the two big ones for buying. Okay, so for buying an unpainted resin, you're obviously just going to get a blank resin. I'm not using my good camera today so I can upload faster, so it's not going to focus as well. You just get a blank unpainted resin. Okay, so buying an unpainted resin, you're going to have to think about several things. One, you're going to have to think about the fact you're going to have to get it prepped. Some artists do prepping, some artists don't. So you have that cost now involved. Even if your artist does prepping, they normally charge you between $30 and $60, so you have that fee to take into account. You have a painting fee to take into account, which can normally range anywhere from $150 to $500. It just depends on the artist you want. Of course, it can be more than that too. I tend to stick with artists in that range I just told you. So you have now that cost to consider. You also have to consider the cost of shipping this resin to the artist and shipping this resin back to you after the artist is done. That can be almost $50 in and of itself. So there's a lot of cost involved in an unpainted resin. The problem is you have to find an artist. This is getting increasingly harder as artists are closing their books down. You have to find an artist whose work you like, whose books are open, who's willing to do that color. Like I said, I like to use some people who don't prep horses, so I have to send horses out to get prepped, and when that happens, then I have even more shipping costs. So it can be very pricey to get a resin painted. It's not always just a cheap in and out process, especially if you're wanting to pick a good artist who really is going to do a quality job. Buying a painted resin, you're going to have one single cost. You're going to buy it from whoever is selling it painted. You're going to already know what you're going to have to pay. You're already going to know shipping. You ship from that artist to you, and you have yourself a painted horse. Problem is, you might not get to be as picky on your artists. There's certain artists who don't really paint sales pieces, so you're never really going to get their work. There's certain artists who don't paint certain pieces. Like a lot of artists don't paint and sell ebrels. I mean, a bunch of artists do, but some artists don't because ebrels are more expensive in general to buy. So they don't paint them as a sales piece because they're harder to turn and get a profit for their time. So you're going to be more limited in color. You're going to be more limited in artists. You're going to be more limited in how picky you can be. But you're going to automatically know what you're going to have to pay. You're going to see the cost. You're not going to have to pay for the resin and pay for the paint job. It's all going to be in one lumped price. Everything is in one price versus with an unpainted, you're going to have lots of little amounts you're paying for. So how to pick unpainted or painted when you're buying is a tricky concept. This is where you have to watch the market. you have to know the trends. I used Stormwatch. I brought him out in this video. He's the, I don't know if I can, let's move y'all. I brought Stormy in here because he's a good example for what the question was asked. What can be the price cons to buying an unpainted versus a painted? I'm using Stormy because lately Stormy's unpainted price has been very, very high, meaning I've seen his unpainted price several times go over $1,200, which I think is insane. But anyways, he's really expensive unpainted, but his painted pieces that he is going for is a lot less than his unpainted price. So if you're wanting a Stormwatch, right now it's almost smarter to look for a painted piece. I have seen top quality painted Stormwatches going for less than an unpainted Stormwatch. I brought her in here because the Cobra Mares are kind of the same thing. Not necessarily this exact one. I mean, there haven't been a lot of Cobra Mares for sale lately for me to compare with, but the few I've seen, an unpainted Cobra Mare, she's one of the Cobra Mares, this one's Esperanza, are going to be usually good deal more expensive than a painted one. And even if they're not more expensive, for instance, the last Cobra Mare, I saw an Estella sell unpainted for $800, and that was offer, so that wasn't like one person put a price and it sold. That was people bidding, and I know it sold. So $800, considerably more than I paid for mine. But I saw a painted one turn around and sell for about $675 a few months before that. So, and then I saw another one, another Cobra Mare sell for like right at $1,000. So you could spend $800 to get an unpainted Cobra Mare. Then you're looking at $200 to $400 for prepping and painting and everything like that. But you could just buy a painted one for about $900. Just, depending on the artist. I'm just throwing out random numbers. That's kind of what you have to look at. Is it going to be worth paying $500 for this resin unpainted, then paying $50 to get it prepped, then paying $200 to get a paint job? Or is it worth it to go ahead and wait for a painted one that might be $800 or $900? That's just the way to look at it. Stormy, is it worth paying $1,200 for an unpainted, or waiting for a painted one that comes up that you like and is in top quality and it's $800, $900? I used Bacchus and Vince as examples because both of these resins are currently available. Bacchus is, from what I know, still available from Amelia. Vince is still available from Resins by Randy, but I think the long mane and tail version, the mold is starting to wear out, I think. That's my new casting was a little rough, has some flaws here and there, and that's what they told me is the casting's getting a little old. I use these as examples because they're still available from the artists themselves. Their price hasn't hit the second-hand market as an influx because they're sold out. In this case, it can be a little cheaper to buy the unpainted resin from them and get it painted, because then when it's sold, the base price of the resin is usually going to be included. Bacchus is still available. If you'll notice the trend of Bacchuses that have Bacchusi, I'm not sure what the plural version of that would be. If you've noticed the trend of him selling painted, it's going to include that base cost plus the paint job. So these two right now, since they're still currently available, you're going to break even. You can get a painted piece and, spend a good amount of money, but you can also get them painted to your specifications and probably spend about the same, because when people are considering buying them painted, you're not having to think about, oh, well, this resin's sold out, it's going to be really hard to get. Same thing, this guy just sold out. I've already seen one sell secondhand, and he sold for $30 more than Morgan sold him for, unpainted. So it's another thing to keep in mind. Once the resin edition sells out, once it's sold out, it's going to be a little bit more expensive than when it was sold by the artist. So keeping that in mind, is it cheaper to buy him painted or unpainted? His unpainted value has now increased, and that's going to be factored into his painted value. when people are bidding on a painted one, they're going to be thinking about the fact that they cannot get this resin anymore. So it would be different than Vince over here, who people might think, now I can't speak for everyone, I'm just speaking in general and how I think, that piece is painted, I sort of like it, but I can still buy that resin unpainted and get exactly what I want. Over here, it's no longer readily available. You have to wait for someone else to be selling that copy unpainted, so you're going to be less picky. So in a nutshell here, each resin is going to have its own value as to if it's cheaper to get it unpainted or painted. It's also going to depend on who's listing what. Is that person just wanting their money back? Is that person wanting a profit? Some people are really good about selling their resins for only about $20 more, the unpainted resins, for only about $20 more than they paid from the artist. Others, are going to go for a profit and go for market value. There's not a wrong way in that. Obviously you shouldn't buy resin from an artist while it's still available just to make a profit. That is wrong. But once the artist resin is sold out, you can't get it from that artist anymore. Obviously, most people are going to raise the price because it's going to be in more demand. You just have to keep in mind with the trends. Are the painted versions selling cheaper than the unpainted versions that are no longer available? Are the unpainted versions still available? If so, can you, if you're looking for a painted resin that's a still available resin, so we're using Bacchus and Vince as examples because you can still buy them. If you're looking to buy a painted Vince or Bacchus, you can think about, okay, this is what it would cost me to buy an unpainted one. This is what it would cost me to get one painted to exactly what I want. Is it a good deal? The other good thing about buying unpainted is you can hold them like this for as long as you want and wait until an idea or an artist, a specific artist you want, opens up. Sometimes I'll get an unpainted resin and hold on to them for months just waiting for a certain artist to open up. The good thing about painted is you don't have to worry about that. You already have them painted. The other thing is you can't change them really. You can't add details to another artist's work without asking their permission or having them do it. You can't really resculpt to it if you want to resculpt. You can't change the color unless you strip it. So you've kind of limited yourself. I do both methods as you've seen. I buy some unpainted, I buy some painted, I do some both with some molds. So that's for that to keep in mind. I hope this kind of helps if you're trying to figure out if you should go unpainted or painted. Just do a little research on the market, see if that resin's available, try and track down the prices, try and see what it's selling for unpainted, see what it's selling for painted. Just keep in mind when you're looking at painted pieces, is it a quality known artist or is it a bad paint job? Obviously something with a bad paint job isn't going to be comparable to a quality paint job because that's going to change the price. So alright guys, I'm going to go watch some more TV as I cannot drive anywhere. I'll be posting on Instagram a lot today. Thank you for all your condolences on my post yesterday. It was really hard on us and it was really tough, but he was very, very old and it wasn't totally unexpected. Obviously a loss is always unexpected, but as in a whole of being prepared, and we had already spent a lot of time with him, we had sort of prepared ourselves that this situation could arise. So it wasn't just a total shock that a horse, you had no idea that was right around the corner or anything. We had spent a lot of time with him lately because he was having a lot of other health issues. But again, thank you so much for all those condolences, and I hope you like this video, and I'll post some more soon.